Well, welcome everybody to our Developing Developers training. And we have the absolute privilege and joy of having Mac Lake with us here today. And I just wanted to say welcome, Mac. Thank you very much for investing in us and all Mac has helped us with and in our leadership pipeline. We cannot put into words how grateful we are for you, Mac. And it's an absolute joy to have you here with us.
Dan, I love C3 and it's so good to be with you guys today. It's an honor to do this with you today.
Wonderful. Thank you. And I just wanted to start today how we develop leaders at C3 Powerhouse. And we all know this, that we prepare new leaders through apprenticing, we equip existing leaders through huddles, and we invest into leaders through continuous coaching. And what today is all about, we are talking to developers and potential developers. And we just really, the purpose of today is to pick Mac's brain, the master of how to be a brilliant developer. And we want today to be very practical because we want to equip you and train you as you begin the journey of becoming a developer. But I thought it'd be great, Mac, just to start with what is the why? Can you give us just your 1 minute summary of the heart and why behind being a developer?
Yeah, sure can. Dan, what I've discovered is so many church staff and church people, They look at leadership development as identifying somebody and placing them in a role for the sake of the church, that local church. But really, leadership development is about helping somebody identify a calling on their life, position them in a place that God has for them to maximize their life impact. And so many times we look at leadership development as building our little kingdom as a leader or as a church leader, but it's really about advancing God's kingdom. Leadership development is about advancing the mission, because there will always be more people that need to be reached, and the more people you reach, the more leaders you need. And this is one reason why Jesus selected 12. He poured into those 12. Jesus did leadership development with those 12. Later on, he selected 70 and sent them. And so he had this practice of developing leaders to expand his message. And that's what I love about you guys is you're expanding the church in different localities. You can't do that without leadership development.
Absolutely. I love that. And what a privilege it is to be a part of the vision of developing new leaders. I love hearing that. And I just would love to start. What do you see as some traits or competencies that make a brilliant developer?
Yeah, it's a great question, because so many people disqualify themselves immediately. Oh, I could never develop a leader. Oh no, and I'm happy to serve as the children's leader, but I could never develop another children's leader, because that's your job as the staff member. And it's this professional mentality that we put around leadership development that doesn't need to be there. And so I think several of the traits that I'm looking for is a willingness to get out of my comfort zone and develop somebody else.
Wow.
I've got to be willing to step out of my comfort zone and do that. The second trait I'm looking for is somebody that can model the way. Model the way.
Yes.
There are so many leaders in your church that you look at and go, I wish they would reproduce themselves, because they're so good at what they do, both character and competency. I wish they'd reproduce themselves, but they tell themselves, oh, I can't do that. But so the second thing I'm looking for is somebody that can model the way. The third thing I'm looking for in a great developer is somebody that leads with questions, leads with asking, not leads with telling.
Brilliant.
So whenever you're doing an apprenticing session, one of the mistakes we can make is think, okay, I'm sitting with Dan, I'm supposed to train Dan, so Dan, here's everything I know. Now, Here's the problem with that. I'm making the assumption that you're a blank slate, that you're bringing no experience, that you're bringing no competency into that meeting. And so, but if I lead with questions, and so for example, and I would say, hey, Dan, today we're talking about team building. Who's the best team builder you've ever been around? What made them so good? You know, how would you rank yourself as a team builder? Would you say you're a 5, which is, you know, excellent, 3 average, or 1 below average? How would, now you might say, Mac, I'm a 4. Well, that tells me something. That tells me I don't need to give you the basics. You've already got the basics. And so I've got to learn to lead with asking, not lead with telling. And then another important quality is the courage to provide feedback. Now, I say the courage to provide feedback because most people look at feedback as, oh, now, wait a minute now, you're asking me to criticize them. No, I'm not. No, I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm asking you to encourage and coach them.
Come on.
And so many people hold back on feedback because they're like, well, I don't want it. I mean, Dan's a volunteer. I don't want to criticize him. He's volunteering his role, and I don't want to give him feedback because it'll feel critical. Here's the distinguishing factor right here. When I provide feedback, does it feel like I'm criticizing your performance or coaching your potential?
Wow.
So if let's say you're apprenticing under me, and I go, hey Dan, you know, hey, good job tonight leading small group, but next time, man, I think you need to be a little more prepared, and you really need to ask better questions. That's feedback, but it feels like I'm criticizing your performance. But if I say, Dan, man, it was so fun to watch you lead group tonight. You did so many things well. What do you think you did well? What's something you think you could do better? And then you tell me something that you feel like you could do better. And then I go, man, I think you're right on that. I noticed that. Let me tell you something I think you did well. Then let me tell you something. Next time, if you tweak some of your questions, oh my gosh, Dan, your presence in the room is so strong and people love you. You tweak your questions a little bit, your leadership's going to go to a whole nother level. Now, here's what I just coached your performance. Now I could say the same thing as, hey Dan, you didn't do a very good job asking questions tonight. So we have to have the courage to provide feedback, but provide it in a way that feels like I'm coaching their potential.
I love that, Mac. Oh, wow. Come on. That is so cool. And I love what you said, that we can so often disqualify ourselves. But when we actually look at that, it's like, oh, wait a minute, I can do that. I can encourage people. I can coach people. And oh, that is amazing. And so for us being a developer, there's you go.
Yeah. Let me add one more thing there.
Sure.
So many times when I say, hey, we got to model the way. So many times we think as the developer that I have to have it all together, that I have to do it right. Let me tell you, I used to train church plant trainers. And so I would be training some church planters, and I would have the potential trainers watch me train them. And as I was training them, I would tell my trainers, now watch me do this, this, and this. I would be training the church planters, and every once in a while I'd stop. I go, time out, guys, hold on a second. I would turn to my potential trainers, I'd say, let me tell you what I just did wrong.
Wow.
And I'd say, and then when we would gather afterwards and debrief, I'd say, okay, guys, here's what I think I did well. What do you think I did well? Now, what did you see that you would have done different? And let me tell you what I wish, if I had to do it over, here's what I've done different. So what I'm doing is I'm leveraging my weaknesses for their learning, for the sake of their learning.
Wow.
And we never think about it because we think, I got to be perfect model. No, you don't. Your imperfections are some of the better lessons when you're apprenticing somebody.
Yes. Oh, that is powerful. And I love that, just the way you're sharing this. And I just want to encourage everyone watching this is you are going to be a brilliant developer. I know that you have it in you. And I love this training because we can all, it's in our heart. We want to do this. And to be a developer for us, Mac, as you're aware, we run apprenticing meetings and we also do shadowing. So that's how we prepare new leaders. But I want to just focusing on the apprenticing meeting. So that's going through 6 competencies. And I just wanted to start by asking, what does the agenda look like for a brilliant apprenticing meeting?
Yeah. So years ago, I asked my wife, I said, honey, I need you to start apprenticing some of our leaders. She said, I can't do that. I said, yeah, you can. You got to do it. You have to do it. I'm the leadership development pastor. You have to do it. And she said, I don't know how to do that.
Ground.
I said, what if I gave you training wheels? And so here's what I shared with her. And when I shared it with her, she said, I can do that. I can use the training wheels. Here's the training wheels. When I sit down with, 3 to 5 people that I'm apprenticing in an apprenticing session where we're going to have the discussion, I'm going, number one, I'm going to start with personal. It's 5 P's, personal. How you doing? How are you doing? How's
Love
your
it.
soul? How's your family? Those sort of things. So I'm gonna talk them through that. Second, I'm going to process the content. I'll process the content. Hey, what stood out to you as you read this? What mistakes did you think leaders make when they, whatever the competency is? So we're just going to process through that content. And then the third P is hey, we're wrapping up this training module. What's the plan? What's the plan? What are you going to do? What's your biggest takeaway? What's yours? What's the next action step you're going to take? And then the fourth one is praise. Hey, what can we thank God for? As leaders, what do we have God thank God for? And then the final P is prayer. Hey, how can we pray for each other? So you're finishing up. Hey, you're starting with soul care. How you doing? But then you're finishing out praising God and then praying for each other. And so, man, now all of a sudden it starts with soul care, ends with soul care. It's not just about me fine-tuning your competencies. It's about me walking. It's about me walking with you and discipling you as a leader.
Yes. And I love that because we lead soul to soul. Yeah, no, that's exceptional. Mm-hmm. Brilliant. And I just love to keep digging a little bit at the apprenticing meetings. Maybe someone's watching here for Max, someone's watching who's never facilitated one before and they're about to step out. Why don't you just give us a few do's and don'ts? I love that agenda, but what would just be a few practical, do this. This is a great way how to facilitate, and actually don't do this. Love to hear your thoughts.
One thing I would say you've got to do is you've got to demonstrate enthusiasm about the process.
Yes.
So, don't walk into the apprenticing session, sit down, lean back in your chair and say, y'all, I'm sorry I was late today. Boy, traffic was heavy. And what competency are we talking about today? My posture, my voice, my body language communicates something versus sitting down and saying, guys, I love this session talking about delegation. I can't wait to dig into it today. I've learned so much through this. I can't wait to hear what you're learning. So, demonstrate enthusiasm. You have to do that. Yeah. The second thing you got to do, and that first P takes care of it. Get to know your people. Get to know your people. Get to know their heart. Get to know their family. Get to know what they do for a living. I mean, this is discipleship. You can't disciple somebody without knowing them.
Amen.
Third thing is don't leave the meeting without an action step. You got to wrap it up. Say, okay, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Give me one action step. So many times we think leadership development is me backing up on somebody and dumping everything I know about leadership on them. That's not leadership development. That's dumping, right?
Come on. Yeah.
Leadership, here's leadership development is helping a potential leader identify their next step they need to take as a spiritual leader. So if I leave that apprenticing session and everybody I'm training walks away with one next step to lead more like Jesus, Now I know they can grow. And so
Yes.
those are some do's and don'ts. The other thing I would say, don't shy away from competency. Some of your
Yes.
people are going to struggle with this and go, wait a minute, why are we teaching competencies? This is church, we should be focused on character. I agree, it's about character, but it's also about competency. One of my life verses is Psalm 78:72. David shepherded them with a pure heart. That's leadership character. But he guided them with skillful hands. That's leadership competency. Leadership spirit, leadership skill. He had both. That's what made him a great leader. And so sometimes leaders have great leadership spirit, but they don't have skill. So you follow them for a while because they're a great person. But you go, I'm not going to follow them anymore because they're not getting anything done. And then you got other leaders that they got leadership skill. They get things done, but you don't follow them too long because after a while you go, they're just using me. And I think the church has done a decent job growing people's character, but not competency. That's why it's got to be a balance, because what happens if we don't grow their competency, we end up with good people in leadership, but they can't lead their way out of a paper bag. If you study through the life of Christ, he was undoubtedly, sinless. Character was flawless. But if you look at the nuances of his leadership, he was a brilliant leader.
Come on.
Here's what I asked a group. I asked a group the other day. I asked them this, because somebody in the group, I could tell they were wrestling with this competency thing. And I said, let me ask you something. If you got a team of people and there's not unity among that team, you're not empowering them so that they're maximizing their strengths and their gifts. They really don't know what to do because you haven't cast a really good vision. They don't feel cared for because they really don't know how you feel about them. If that's the case, are you really leading like Jesus?
Wow.
Competencies are important in spiritual leadership. So, we can't overlook that. Character, undoubtedly important. We do a good job with that. But so as a developer, don't get uncomfortable when people go, wait a minute, why are we talking about this leadership competency stuff in the church? It's important. It's what made David a great leader. It's that competency and character.
I love every time we talk, Mac, and I get to hear you. Something happens in me. I just want to go and make disciples and raise great leaders. And something, I love what you shared a bit earlier. I want to circle back because I think this is very helpful for people about leading through asking questions. And I think, Mac, that something I've admired about you from the moment I met you is just you are so brilliant at asking great questions that it unlocks something in people. You're drawing out their experiences and their wisdoms. For someone watching right now who might not be as confident in I don't know what questions to ask, what would be some tips you have on asking great questions?
Yeah, the first tip is this. Recognize that the purpose of asking questions is not discussion. The purpose of asking questions is discovery. I want the person to discover something. So you've watched me lead discussions before, and there's just this curiosity about people that drives me. So when somebody says, well, I'm not sure that I'm really good at that, my mind just starts going nuts. And I wonder why they think they're not good at that. And so I just start leaning in because I want to ask questions to help them discover what the roadblock is for them, Yeah. And so that's why questions are so important, and they don't have to be that hard, in your apprenticing. So for example, in your apprenticing, they read something, put it into practice, you get together and you talk about it. All right?
Yes.
I mean, I'm just going to ask, hey, what stood out to you the most? What challenged you the most? What leadership strength did it affirm? When you read that article, what leadership strength did it affirm in you? What growth area did it reveal to you? What scripture teaches or illustrates what was taught in this article.
Yes.
What's one way you can put that into practice at home, at work, as well as in your ministry position?
Wow.
What are 3 to 5 action steps you need to take? Just things like that. Those are simple questions. What are some common mistakes that leaders make around this particular topic? Things like that. Those simple little questions will draw out some rich discussion if I pause and listen. And then, now, after you ask those questions, follow-up questions are the key.
Yes.
Don't say, hey, what stood out to you? Person 1 answer, person 2 answer, person 3 answer. Okay, question number 2. Don't want to do that.
Yes.
So somebody answers. Now I'm going to follow. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm listening for a trigger word.
Come on.
What's a word in your answer? So if I say, hey, Dan, what's your greatest strength? And you say, well, I think my greatest strength is communication because I do this, that. Okay, Dan, you said you think communication's your greatest strength. Why did you hesitate? What's your hesitancy? How would you assess yourself as a communicator? Would you say you're green, really strong, yellow, growing, or red, novice? Why do you score yourself? Oh, okay, low yellow. Okay, well, what's your next step to go up to a high yellow? And so now I'm drawing something out of you. My curiosity is trying to help you discover something about yourself so that you can take a next step that in that session that the Holy Spirit reveals to you, not that Mac assigns to you.
Yes.
Now there are times as a trainer, I'll sense God saying something to me about you, and I'll say, "Here, all right, listen. Here's what I think you need to do. Write this down. I'm going to hold you accountable for this." Okay.
Yeah.
But there are other times I want you to self-discover what your next step is.
Oh, this is brilliant. And I love what you're sharing there about a key to asking great questions is active listening. I love that thought for all of us to think through. We're listening for those trigger words. And one thought I've learned through leading a few apprenticing meetings is the temptation can be, because we get given questions, I have to get through all these questions. And person 1, then person 2. But I actually think the goal, what I'm hearing and you is, follow the gold, that we can just be a bit more organic, listen, and I love it, curiosity, discovery, and then I love that last what you shared about relying on the Holy Spirit. And I would say I've learned some of my best moments in apprenticing meetings have been, following down the trail of active listening, discovery. And it's okay to not ask every question on the official training thing, isn't it?
I rarely ask all the questions. Rarely.
Yes, come on.
This is why you have to know what's the intent. What's the intent? The intent is not to get through all the questions. The intent is not to get through all the content. The intent is to help each individual around that circle identify what their next step is around that one competency. That's the intent. And I might ask brilliant. You might end up asking 2 questions from the script, but a bunch of follow-up questions. Because one of the questions follow-up questions I ask somebody, I'll ask them a question, they'll answer, and I'll go, oh, wow, tell me a story about that. And I caught putting on the reporter hat. I put on the reporter.
Yes.
Tell me a story about that. And when they tell me a story, anytime in a session somebody tells me a story, I immediately follow that with, man, what did God teach you through that? Or what did you learn from that? Or I'll look at the group and say, that was a great story Dan just told. Guys, what's something you learn about leadership from that story he just told? Yes. Now I'm squeezing out the experience of that person and the group because they're not a blank slate. They're not a blank slate. They're bringing their experience. And if I can grab some stories, man, I can squeeze their experience out of it.
This is wonderful. And I just wanted to let everyone know Mac has a great resource, a video around the toolbox of great questions. And so that's going to be part of our package. If this is, I'd encourage everyone, make sure you go listen to that. But look, just to land here today, Mac, I'm so grateful for this amazing content. And I feel for us that's phenomenal around how to lead facilitate apprenticing meetings. Can we just finish on shadowing? Like, why do you think shadowing is so important to couple with the apprenticing meetings?
Everybody needs a model. The modeling is more powerful than the content.
Wow.
And so many times we depend on the content. So you can let's say you read a training module on how to facilitate discussion, and you read it. Now you got the knowledge. Now you come into my small group where I'm mentoring you, right? And you watch me lecture the entire time in the small group. You know what you're going to do? You're more likely going to follow my model than the content.
Yes.
You're going to do what you see, not necessarily what you hear. And so, so this is why the shadowing is so important, is that you're learning from the reading. Oh, here's how I do it. Oh, I see somebody doing it. It's putting it together. Jesus, his disciples shadowed him for 3 years.
Yes,
they watched him. And here's the other thing. It's funny. I've done this the study of the life of Christ chronologically, and it was in the last 8 months of his life. 3 times he looked at those guys and said, "You're just not getting it." They'd already been shadowing for 2 years. At one point, he looked at me, "Are you so dull? You're still not getting this?" So here's the thing and I love that you guys get this. Shadowing takes time. So imagine here in the States, churches will tell you, "Oh, we use shadowing." Here's what that means. They find a potential new leader. Let's say somebody that's never led 6th grade boys before in their life. They put them in, they say, "Follow that guy for 2 weeks and watch him lead 6th grade boys, and then we're going to give you your own group of 6th grade boys." That is the equivalent. That's the equivalent of sticking somebody in a batting cage that's never played baseball, throwing 2 pitches and expecting them to get a hit. They're going to strike out. Shadowing takes time. Yeah, I would say it takes a season for people to season. It doesn't take 2 weeks. It takes a season for people to season. So here's the other advice I would give your developers. Not everybody grows at the same pace and same rate.
Right. Yeah.
I was mentoring 2 young men in my small group. This was years ago. One of them, I got him through the content. One of them was ready to start his own group in 12 weeks. We launched him out to start his own group. The other guy wasn't ready for 12 months.
Wow.
So, we finished up the content. I looked at him and I said, "How ready do you feel?" He said, "I still got a lot to learn." I said, "I agree. You do. So just keep riding shotgun with me. Keep apprenticing, co-lead with me. I'm going to keep giving you more reps in the batting cage before I put you in the game." And it took him a year to season. Not everybody's going to grow at the same rate. And so I was at a church recently. Guy comes up and he said, "Now, how long do I have to apprentice somebody before I can put them in a position?" I looked at him and I said, "Your question reveals a fundamental misunderstanding of leadership development."
I'm getting convicted, Mac. Conviction.
Yeah, everybody grows at a different rate. So be patient. That would be another trait of a developer.
Yeah.
I'm patient.
Brilliant.
I'm patient.
Oh, exceptional. Well, Mac, today has been just so helpful. I can't say thank you enough. But just to finish in the last minute or so, is there anything else on your heart you'd like to share to our developers and potential developers?
Yeah. One thing I would say is this. It takes practice to get better at it. You're not going to magically become a great developer. You got to be bad before you're good. You got to be good before you're great. All right. The only way you're going to get from bad to great is practice. Okay. So start with some people you feel safe with. That's okay.
Yeah.
And just be honest with them. Be honest with them. The second thing I would say is this. Use the principles that you're learning about development. Don't just use them at church with those you're raising up as future leaders or future coaches, etc.
Yeah.
Use it at work. Use these principles to impact people at work. Use it with your family, your grandchildren, your children. Use these development techniques with your family and people in your community. Make it a part of your lifestyle. And the last thing I would say is this. One of the most selfish acts a leader can demonstrate is a refusal to reproduce themselves.
Wow.
Some people go, I don't want to develop another small group leader. I like my small group. I'm doing fine. I can handle this by myself. That is thumbing your nose at God's kingdom and saying, I don't care what happens in the future once I'm gone. I'm just taking care. And here's the thing. There's a pastor who looked at me years ago. Dan, I was voted the shyest kid in my junior high class.
Wow.
I was told in my early 20s, you're a nice guy, but you're not a leader. You're not a good leader.
Wow.
And they were right. They were right. But in my mid-20s, a pastor looked at me and said, Mac, I want you to come in my office every week. I'm going to give you an article, an audio to listen to, a video to watch, and I want you to write down questions and come in my office every week. Ask me the questions. I'll answer them because I'm going to teach you how to lead. Wow. And over a period of time, I did this for 2 years. I did this, but over a period of time, I'd go in, I'd say, "Oh, here's my question." I'd ask him a question, and he'd look at me and go, "That's a good question. What do you think?" And he started making me answer.
Hey, now, smart.
Dan, I love what I do. I get to train churches in leadership development all across the United States and other countries as well.
Yeah.
Would have never happened if that pastor didn't develop me as a leader. I would have never fulfilled the calling that God's given me on my life.
Wow.
If somebody didn't see leadership potential in me.
Wow.
I was training a guy the other day. He's from the Caribbean. And he looked at me and said, you have to pull the leader out of the follower.
Hey.
And that's what you're doing. That's what you're doing. Leadership. You're pulling the leader out of the follower.
Mac.
Don't look at people for what they are today. Look at people for what they can be a year from now if you pour into them and develop them. You learn that, you'll change so many people's lives. Your leadership, your legacy, kingdom legacy will be expansive because it's not just dependent on what you did as a leader, but it's a fanning effect of what the leaders you developed did with their lives as well.
Yes. Oh, thank you so much. What a note to finish on. And we're so grateful for you, Mac. You are a brilliant leader. You're a gift to us. And I just want to finish by saying, everyone watching, we believe in you. You have what it takes, and we know you are going to make a fantastic developer. God bless you. Thank you so much.